Hi guys. Matthew 8:27. The men were amazed and asked, "What kind of man is this? Even the winds and the waves obey him." Remember, that's when Jesus was in the boat with some of his disciples, and the storm was really bad, and they woke Jesus up, and Jesus is like, "Where's your faith?" He told the wind and the waves, "Quiet, be still." And it listened to him, of course. And it got silent and got silent still. The wind stopped and everything. And the disciples were like, "Who is this? Even the winds and the waves obey him." And this story is called The Lord of Wind and Flame. It was June of 1984, and Alberta McCreary and her friend Louise were visiting Louise's relatives in Lewis, Kansas. Suddenly, Louise's sister-in-law dashed into the living room, pale and frightened. "The wheat fields are on fire." The fields lay just between them and the town school. As the women ran outside, they could hear crackling and see smoke billowing in the air. Kansas winds are strong and constant, especially across open plains. Alberta explains, and with the wheat still uncut, fire would soon turn the fields into a tinderbox of destruction. Everyone's first thought was to get to Grandma, who was almost immobile with arthritis and home alone. "Pray, Alberta," Louise shouted over her shoulder, running down the road to Grandma's house. Now they could see the flames, whipped by high winds, sweeping toward the school buildings. What an inferno! It would be minutes before fire trucks could arrive, and by then the buildings would be engulfed. People were running and yelling, but Alberta looked upward, asking God to send protection. With all hands aloft, racing down the street, I called upon the angels to calm the winds and bring the fire under control, she says. At this point, Grandma had come out of the house and down the stairs. Louise had grabbed a water hose, and sirens were sounding in the distance. Then an astonishing thing happened, Alberta says. The wind, that unceasing, ever-blowing Kansas wind, died down. Suddenly and completely, the entire atmosphere seemed hushed. Even the birds stopped singing. Not a whisper of breeze touched Alberta's cheeks. In just a few seconds, with no draft to fan in, the fire stopped its onward rush. Instead of moving across the fields, it burned straighter and slower. By the time the trucks arrived, it was under control, just yards from the school buildings. We gave fervent thanks to the unseen forces who swept into action at our call, Alberta says. They do move in a mysterious way. Mother Angelica is the founder of Our Lady of the Angels Monastery and was, until a few years ago, the host of a television show on Eternal Word Television Network. The story about how she built a monastery and a successful cable network would require a book of its own, but suffice to say that she is not surprised when miracles happen. At one point, Mother decided to move her sisters from the original facilities in Birmingham, Alabama, to a farm area several miles away. This necessitated plenty of trips back and forth on a semi-rural road, and one day Mother went to the farm with several nuns and some members of her board of directors. They were on their way back to Birmingham in two vehicles when one of them sisters phoned from the convent. "Get off the highway," she said to the nun who answered the cell phone. "The radio says there's a tornado coming your way." Sister repeated the news to Mother Angelica, and everyone in the car looked out. There were definitely black clouds gathering on the side of the road, but everything else looked calm. "How can there be a tornado when it's so sunny out?" Mother wondered aloud. The glare was so bright that she was shielding her eyes. No one knew, but within a few moments black clouds were visible on the other side of the road. The nun driving the second car pulled up next to Mother, motioning to the clouds and looking frightened. Everyone began to pray. Mother was puzzled. The sun was still shining above them on the road. Were there 2 storms? One on each side? She was no meteorologist, but something seemed odd. I finally started to get a little worried when I saw a tornado chaser pass us, she admits. But where was the tornado? The clouds on both sides did get larger and darker, but the sun continued to shine directly above their 2 cars. Eventually, they all arrived safely at the Birmingham Monastery, and the nuns ran out to greet them. It was then that the travelers learned that the tornado had indeed came down their road. Apparently, everyone in the surrounding area had seen it and had felt the incredible wind. Everyone but them. For many years, Carol Rosen lived in a house along the ridge of a hill in San Diego. Whenever she felt it, she would bless it, thank God for protecting it, and picture it surrounded in a white light. During one especially dry September, Carol attended a spiritual retreat in Idlewild, a town near Palm Springs. During my stay, I was suddenly shown a vision of my house with a large cross of white light over the top of it, she says. I had no idea what this meant, but I knew it was good. So I thanked God and blessed my home again. A few days later, she drove back to San Diego, feeling rested and refreshed despite the over 90-degree temperature and a hot and heavy Santa Ana wind. Almost home, however, she looked up and saw her entire hill enveloped in flames, black smoke billowing upward. I didn't dare go up any farther, Carol says. I parked at the foot of the driveway and stood there and prayed. The hill would be a total loss. She knew, especially in that drought. Fire trucks didn't arrive until several minutes later. The firefighters ran up to the hill in their asbestos gear, lugging heavy hoses, but it was obviously too late. There was too much smoke and flame for Carol to see the destruction, but the fierce Santa Ana winds would have spread the fires quickly. Yet when the first firefighters came down from the hill, they were incredulous. We put out the fire, one told Carol. Not one home was touched on either hill. Everything is safe. We can't understand it. Then I understood what the cross of light I had seen meant, Carol says. We were all being divinely protected. Not a house was touched.